Hello and welcome back to TriggerSmart. So yesterday, Candace came out and said that Andrew Colvet's original tweet or message, wherever it was, they said that Charlie had a neck made of steel and all this kind of stuff from the surgeon, and that it was a 30-06 round, made everyone immediately assume that it was a typical 30-06 round. So when all the testing that's online and everyone that's been posting videos and ballistic gel and everything else and shooting animal parts and pork shoulders and that kind of stuff, they weren't able to get the bullet to stay inside of it, which made sense. And that's why people like Valhalla, Paramount Tactical, and some of the other channels immediately went to, that's impossible. Not going to happen. That's why they weren't buying the narrative. That's basically the only reason why most people weren't buying the original FBI narrative. Now, there's other extenuating circumstances around all of that, like who helped Tyler Robinson if he's the shooter. Was there an actual second shooter and he was set up? Was there some foreign government involvement, right? So there's all those questions. Those are still there. But the original 30-06 question, if what Candace says is true, means that frangible ammo was used. So that's what we're going to cover today. I'm going to show you examples of what it can do. And then we're going to kind of talk about this whole new theory now. If it's 30-06 FBI narrative and frangible ammo, then it might work. Let's get into it. First, let's see a demonstration of what frangible ammo looks like when it actually hits its target. So do you see that? So you have an intact bullet, and basically to sum up what a frangible round is it's loaded just like a regular round. It's in the same cartridge. Everything else, it has the same casing. It has gunpowder behind it, just like a regular full metal jacket or similar type of round. The difference is that the bullet that you see flying through the air, the projectile, is compressed or compacted powder, usually metal powder. So when it hits its target, it basically disintegrates on contact, all right? And depending on what you have as far as like the flesh or the bone, or like in this case, shooting steel or wood, sometimes that tip doesn't break up and sometimes it still penetrates. So if you were, for example, to shoot a water bottle or in some cases ballistic gel, which I've said before is not a one-to-one for human flesh because it doesn't have muscles and tendons and bones and stuff in it. So sometimes it will still penetrate and the bullet will still be intact. But if it hits metal or bone, then it can disintegrate like you see here. So now I want to address the elephant in the room. People are going to say if Andrew Colvet made up this original lie or embellished on what the surgeon supposedly said, then how can we believe that this is true? Well, because this actually makes sense. But like Valhalla said last night, that brings up other issues. Because it's very convenient, if it was a frangible round, that whoever was responsible for this, even if it's Tyler Robinson, that's not really traceable back to a specific weapon. Because the bullet is basically disintegrated and gone at that point. There's fragments, but you can't see the rifling pattern and that kind of stuff like you typically can from a regular bullet. So that means that they can't trace this bullet directly back to Tyler's gun, in theory. Now, the frangible metals and the powder that's compacted in that bullet, they said that the casing was still in the gun. So in theory, they could test the compounds of both and maybe link them up that way. But let's get more into kind of what frangible ammo is and what it does. This is a 223 or 5.56, like you would use an AR-15, but the idea is the same. So higher calibers might penetrate slightly further. They might actually even vaporize more because they have more power behind them, more foot-pounds of force when it hits. But this gives you an idea of kind of what it does. Typically, you would expect for it to come in the front, fly through the entire block, and exit the other side, and then you see a large wound cavity and it expands, right? And that's typically what we see. It comes in, and as you can see, there's the large wound cavity, but the wound cavity is only going about halfway across the block, right? And you have some shrapnel, you have some pieces that are breaking off, and each of these little pieces can do damage in their own way. So the theory now makes a lot more sense because if this bullet comes in, it hits the skin and then it hits the vertebrae, breaks up into pieces, and then each of these pieces either hits a different vertebrae or just the fact that this power coming in, the foot-pounds of force from that 30-06, is going to hit that vertebrae, and then the cavitation is going to cause damage up and down the spine and could even cause damage to the brainstem and up into the brain. which could explain that posture. But you can see as it comes in, it doesn't penetrate through, but it causes massive cavitation. And this is what we saw when Charlie got hit. So this explains what we're seeing. And this also makes the neck wound, as well as the cavitation, as well as the broken vertebrae, all make sense. Because now we're not talking about a situation where the bullet comes in and hits and then bounces down and changes directions and hits different vertebrae. Now we have compacted powder in a bullet. This still has a ton of force behind it. It hits the vertebrae, and that force and that cavitation spreads out through everything and destroys everything. And that could even put more pressure on that initial entrance wound to make that wound bigger and make the blood, gush out like we saw. All right, so let's dig a little bit more into frangible ammo. So you can see, like we saw in those videos, the bullet looks like a regular intact bullet, but it's compacted metal powder instead of a full metal jacket, instead of a one solid piece of metal. It comes in, when it hits, it instantly starts to expand into its powdery components. And it just basically turns into a mist or a powder. This is what happens when it hits something solid, when it hits the outside of it. But if it goes into a body or into flesh or into something soft, it's going to keep going and dissipate all the energy from the shot. But then once it hits something hard inside, like the vertebrae in Charlie's case, then it does this inside of his body, and that energy is spread into his vertebrae and expands out into his other vertebrae. So that makes a lot of sense now, because it's not going to just go into the entry wound and out the back like everyone was expecting. And what many people use this type of round for is for military training. And then some competition shooters also get it, but it is much more expensive in some cases. And you're also exposed to a lot of lead, but you can get lead-free variants. But the reason why it's a good training aid is because you can get as close as you want to the steel. You can be a foot away from it and shoot it, and it's going to hit and become powder. So you don't have to worry about it ricocheting and coming back at you. It makes it much more convenient, especially for CQB style training for the military. So here's what it looks like. You have your bullet, and this bullet is compacted powder. I'm not sure of the exact science of how they make the powder hold its shape and that kind of stuff, but I'm sure with enough pressure or force, they can get it to maintain the shape in a press or something similar. I'll have to do more research into that, but it disintegrates when it hits something hard enough. Now, a typical full metal jacket looks like this when it breaks up. So you have the lead pieces and you have the copper pieces. Now, if this is what hit Charlie, then yes, it would probably just go right through, right? Just like Dr. Chris Martenson, Valhalla, Paramount Tactical, Range Day Bro. I mean, all these, there's hundreds of other people that have done it too. Like First Shot TV, all their tests, the bullet just flew right through and exploded whatever it was going through. This is the type of round they were using, or something similar, right? It had much harder components that are designed for penetration. Now, this type of bullet is more for practicing and for up-close shooting, and it was also used, there's some World War II versions of it. So I had a thought. If Tyler Robinson has his grandfather's old rifle, does he have his grandfather's old World War II frangible ammo? Because it was very popular back then. So digging in a little bit more, you find things like this. Frangible ammunition, especially 30 caliber like 30-06 for machine guns, was used in World War II primarily for gunnery, allowing people to train without endangering pilots or causing ricochets with live aircraft. I looked at World War I, and frangible ammo was not as common. So I don't know if there's something there. But my thought was, if Tyler Robinson has his grandfather's old gun, could he also have his grandfather's old frangible ammo laying around? It's possible, but it's not impossible to get frangible ammunition. And if he was working with a group of people, any of them could get access to it or have it and provide it to him. And to a lot of people who are saying that Tyler Robinson couldn't do this because he looks like a nerd, he games all the time, he was on his phone playing Wordle or something after the shooting. You have to remember that these kind of skills are built behind the scenes. So there's actually a popular YouTube channel of a guy who is I believe he is transgender, and they're kind of like that LGBTQ militia type mentality, and they train all the time. But if you saw them in person on the street, you would never, ever realize that they were highly trained with guns. So I think people using the he looks like argument, it's not a very strong argument. Supposedly, Tyler Robinson's brother is also very into guns and hunting. And some of these images show, him with the AR-15. We know that his father was a police officer, and obviously they use guns. And of course, you remember this bullshit.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We got him. On the evening of September 11th, a family member of Tyler Robinson reached out to a family friend who contacted the Washington County Sheriff's Office with information that Robinson had confessed to them or implied that he had committed the incident. This information was relayed to the Utah County Sheriff's Office and scene investigators at Utah Valley University.
Confession and implying are two very different things. There are some people that do not buy this narrative that he was the killer for some various reasons. But let's look at what Mike Glover has to say about it.
As an example, would be super unlikely. I mean, the biggest controversy is obviously the JFK assassination. To think that Oswald alone was a lone gunman with no help and coordination after he travels to Russia. Like, what? So I'm afraid the further away we get from it, every day that we get away from it, the more it becomes a conspiracy and the less it becomes confirmable. And I just think it's ass backwards.
And other people are saying the same thing. And now with this information about this frangible round, they say even though it can explain what happened in the official 30-6 FBI narrative, it adds more questions. So is there someone else behind this? Right? So he could be the shooter, but who set him up? Who groomed him? Who provided him the equipment? How did he learn how to shoot? Now, again, his father was police. So if I have a child and I'm a police officer, or I, like in my case, a firearms instructor, then yeah, I've taught my children. They know how to shoot. I want to make sure they know how to defend themselves with a firearm. So it is not beyond reality to think that he knew how to shoot. And they also said that they hunted. So he can handle a 140 or 200-yard shot fairly easily if he has that kind of experience. And if he is going to be planning this shot, planning how to get in, how to exfil, and all these different things, he has as much time as he wants to learn this stuff. He just took the opportunity at UVU because he said in a message somewhere that UVU was a really bad venue to do this at. So I think he just saw that opportunity, but we don't know how long he was training for. His parents said that it was up to like a year that he'd be getting more radicalized and turning more leftist. So imagine someone taking an entire year and shooting with this supposed like LGBTQ militia. Doesn't even have to be a militia. It could just be friends, right? His radicalized friends, they can go to a range. It's not illegal. Anyone can pick ammo up and go to a range with a rifle. If you're not a felon, then you can shoot. So he could practice. And it doesn't have to be something that's public that everyone sees. He could do this on someone's farm somewhere. He could do this in a forest with his friends, right? So to think that he couldn't get good enough for basic shooting is asinine. And I can tell you with 100% certainty that my children, one of which is 11 years old, can easily hit 3 to 4, 5, 600 yards, especially with a 6.5 Creedmoor or a 30-6. There would be other stresses, obviously. You have the stress of taking another person's life in front of a crowd, the fear of getting caught and all of that stuff. But again, the shot itself is not impossible or extremely difficult, especially at 140 yards. If you ever go out and shoot, 140 yards is fairly simple, right?
He told me that the FBI is not cooperating with him, and he is trying to corroborate potential foreign influence and was getting blocked out of every opportunity to confirm or deny that. And it was written off as no foreign influence less than 48 hours in. And this guy has access to the President of the United States.
So he's saying that someone he knows was trying to get FBI information, and he was getting blocked when he was trying to dig more into this case. And apparently blocked not just like communication-wise and access-wise, but also physically. So this raises a lot more questions now. And then, of course, we have Candace Owens, and she brings the new pieces of the story that Andrew Colvett made up, who has also since wiped his social media and made some of them private, which is very strange. But Candace is saying that the surgeon didn't say the original things, like he had a steel neck and some of the other allegations. She's saying that the surgeon, who is also a hunter, says that he initially thought it was a frangible round.
Yesterday, I revealed to you that I was told that Andrew Colvett was allegedly flying blind when he tweeted out the conversation that he had with the surgeon. Now, just to jog your memory, how that all came about was me doing the show and saying, oh, I saw the back footage and there was no blood. And then very quickly, which I didn't really understand why he had done this, he tweeted out that long tweet about Superman neck, and he puts this quotation in here. Absolutely, the bullet should have gone through, which is very normal for a high-powered, high-velocity round. I've seen wounds from this caliber many times, and they always just go through everything. This would have taken a moose or two down, an elk, etc. Next up, that quotation continues. It was an absolute miracle that someone else did not get killed. His bone was so healthy and the density was so impressive that he's like the man of steel. It should have just gone through and through. It likely would have killed those standing behind him too. It's kind of been a mess since. This is kind of the beginning of everything, right? If we're being honest, that one solitary tweet was the beginning of the, what I would call federal mask slip.
Which is 100% true. So everything that everyone's been looking at, and the reason why all these crazy theories have come out, like the exploding pager or microphone, the shot from behind with a drone, air actuated, faking his death. I mean, you name it. There's like 50 different theories, and they're still going. The electrocution theory just came out. Now, if one of those ends up being true with some proof, then that could be what happened. But the original story makes sense with what she's going to share that the surgeon actually said. And way back then, if we would have known that it was a frangible round, then everyone else would have moved on and stopped looking so deep into this and come up with all these other theories. And this also could have made it so that if this is the correct narrative and this is the correct round, the frangible ammo, it would have made it so that that energy and time everyone put into all these other theories could have been put into this case to figure out who else was working with Tyler Robinson.
Feels like they have been feeding us slop ever since. Well, I now feel comfortable revealing some more information for you, some that I have held on to, but which the people who gave this to me are now insisting that I reveal. Simply put, and I'm going to say allegedly here only because I did not speak directly to Dr. Lee Trotter, but I very much have verified and trust this source. Simply put, never once did Dr. Lee Trotter say that Charlie's neck was stopped. Charlie's neck stopped a .30-06 bullet. It's actually hugely embarrassing for any surgeon to have said something like that. It's hugely embarrassing.
Okay, now this might be a misspeak on her part because she's saying that the surgeon never said that his neck stopped a .30-06 bullet, and then she's going to say that it was frangible ammo and a .30-06 and his neck stopped it, right? So if this is correct, his neck did stop a .30-06 bullet, but the bullet just happened to be frangible. So that was kind of a misspeak there, I think.
Also, because we're being told that, he's violating HIPAA to get this information out there in this very high stress situation. You're actually accusing him of being not a professional on top of also kind of being an idiot. And you can imagine that that's put a lot of undue stress on the surgeon's family, as many of them have been wrongly implicated in a cover-up. Like the absurdity of such a narrative, if you're going to put something out there, there's going to be flack that comes upon the surgeon, the other doctors, the nurses.
She's saying that Andrew Colvett saying that specific statement implicated the surgeon and could put them at risk and damage his reputation. But she's doing the same thing with everyone at TPUSA and any other leads that she finds. So she's doing the exact same thing that she's saying Andrew Colvett shouldn't be doing. But let's keep going.
Were you involved? Did you try to get Charlie Kirk killed? Were you involved in this, in staging this? Why would you say that he ate healthy, right? And there's no doctor or surgeon that would say something like that. So to restate that, the quotation that Andrew Colvett shared on his X feed is not a direct quotation from the surgeon, like at all. Rather, what I was told is that what the surgeon communicated very clearly to Andrew And yes, it is absolutely true that the surgeon, Dr. Lee Trotter, hunts, so he does have experience with bullets. What he communicated is that it was likely a frangible bullet that was used.
Okay, so then she goes on to talk about the frangible bullet. Now, in all fairness, like, yes, she's shared this information. She says the source that she says she trusts is speaking for the surgeon and what he said. So, I mean, if the surgeon was talking to Andrew Colvett, was this person on three-way with the surgeon? Was this person in the room with the surgeon when he's talking to Andrew Colvett? I mean, it would have to be a nurse or a doctor or someone close to be able to be in that area, and that would still go against HIPAA for them to share this information out that the surgeon said. And this is not quoting the surgeon directly. This is a third party quoting the surgeon. Actually, a fourth party, because now Candace is quoting someone else who's quoting the surgeon. But if this is true, then this explains the original narrative of a 30-06 hitting his vertebrae, causing the damage that we see and not exiting out the back. Now, a lot more people are on board, right? But again, this is very strange, the timing. And she said in this video that I've been sitting on this information and I didn't want to share it out. How long has she had this? Has she had this for a couple months, for a couple weeks, couple days? Because people have been running around with all these theories, including myself, searching for what could explain something other than this crazy 30-06 that, you know, bounced around and went down his spine and vertebrae and everything and acted like bullets don't act, right? If she's had this information, how long has she had it? Because she said she's been sitting on it. Okay, so that would be my question to her. But this does explain a 30-06 hitting his neck, cavitating, damaging his vertebrae. That damage in that cavitation could cause what we saw if it damaged part of his brainstem or his brain from the cavitation, making him seize up and go into that decorticate posture. It explains the wound, because if it goes in, right, because this bullet can penetrate it initially, then it hits the vertebrae, and then it releases all of its energy and it basically disintegrates. That pressure has to come out somewhere. And that entry wound is going to be the path of least resistance. So that blood and stuff is going to come back out from that pressure. So that makes a lot of sense. This changes a lot of things if it's true. But again, she's quoting someone who's quoting someone else who's quoting someone else. And she says she's verified the source. How do we know that? Right? Because she shared the Andrew Colvett stuff initially, and that was the source, and he was incorrect, supposedly, right? So this is a lot of hearsay, but if this is true, that explains basically everything. So now we have to look into who else was helping him. Where did he get the ammo? Because again, this isn't super common ammo. So maybe you could trace it back somehow through the purchases, even if he got it from someone else. So then you have the other case too, where when the gun was found, which first of all, why would he ditch the gun? If he's clear and free and he's off campus and he's over in the forest, why would he ditch the gun? But even besides that, let's say he did ditch it. They had dogs that went out there, supposedly. She's hearing from, you know, EMTs and people that were on the ground there, police officers and the search people. Supposedly they are saying that the gun was not there initially. The dogs went through and they didn't find it. And then the FBI shows up and all of a sudden this gun is found. So these dogs don't typically miss stuff like that. You have to remember that they can track people based on just footprints and the change in temperature and that kind of stuff where they stepped previously, right? And they can easily sniff out gunpowder, guns, bombs, that kind of stuff. That's why they use them everywhere. So this is very strange, but let me know your thoughts down in the comments. The frangible ammo 100% fits, but why is it only coming out now? Is the source credible? And does this implicate much more than we originally thought? As always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this around. And if you want to support the channel, you can look down in the description for links. And I'll see you on the next one.